Kayla, welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited to have you guys here again with me. I've got another really exciting one for you. We are actually going to talk about resort hotels. So you're going to Disney World, now you got to figure out where are you guys going to stay. We're just going to talk a little bit about what those different options are, as well as some tips on how to choose what hotel is best for your family. So let's go ahead and get started. There are 3 tiers, well, there's technically 3.5 tiers when it comes to Disney Resort hotels. The first tier that we're going to talk about today is Disney's value resorts. So these are going to be your most budget-friendly options. They're going to be the lowest price ranges. They're going to be a little bit more, I would say, kid-friendly. They're not going to have as many amenities as some of the other hotels. They do still have pools. They do still have food courts, things like that. But for the most part, they're going to be kind of that bottom tier or your more standard type of hotel experience at Disney World. Some of these hotels are going to include Disney's All-Star Resorts, so the All-Star Movies, Sports, and Music. There's Disney's Pop Century Resort, which is actually where we will be staying when we go on our trip, and also Art of Animation. The second tier that we're going to talk about is Disney's Moderate Resorts. So these are going to be a little bit more expensive. They're still not crazy, but they're not the most expensive either. So these are going to be resorts that are going to have a few more amenities. They're going to be, in my opinion, they're a little bit more grown up. They're not as kid oriented, although kids can absolutely stay at any of these resorts, no problem. They are geared just a little bit to a little more older crowd. They tend to have a few more restaurants instead of just the food courts like the value resorts. Some of these resorts are going to include Disney's Coronado Resort, Disney's Caribbean Beach Resort, and of course the Port Orleans French Quarter and Riverside resorts. And then finally, we're going to talk about our third/third-and-a-half tier, and that's going to be Disney's Deluxe and Deluxe Villas. So the Deluxe resorts are going to be some of the most expensive resorts at Disney World. Some of these are going to include the Polynesian Resort, the Contemporary Resort, Beach and Yacht Club, Animal Kingdom Lodge, Wilderness Lodge, and there's a whole bunch more. You can find them on the Disney website. So these are going to have kind of the most amenities. They're going to have, some of them have spas. They are going to have some nicer restaurants, including signature dining restaurants, as well as some quick service, counter service, buffet type different places. The pools are definitely much more elaborate as far as some of their decor goes. These are also kind of geared a little bit more adult. They do have a fancier feel to them. So, I mean, again, you're still gonna see kids at all of these. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you do like something, if maybe it's your honeymoon, these are gonna be really great resorts to go to. They're gonna be usually a little quieter. Along with the deluxe resorts, you have the deluxe villas. Now these are, a lot of these are attached to the normal deluxe resorts, but there's also some that are just standalone villa resorts. So some of these are gonna be like Bay Lake Tower at the Contemporary, there's Kidani Village at Animal Kingdom Lodge, there's Copper Creek at Wilderness Lodge, and there's a few others like that. But then you also have those standalone ones like Saratoga Springs and technically the new Riviera Resort. It's kind of attached to Caribbean Beach, but it's still its own standalone resort. Now these resorts are going to be your most expensive. Most of these are usually going to run you more than $1,000 a night. Crazy, I know, but people do it. Usually these resorts are actually reserved for Disney Vacation Club members. So with those, they basically have already paid for them. It's a little cheaper, I guess, sort of, but you can also pay for these rooms out of pocket, but they are very expensive to do that. Okay, so now to actually start choosing a resort. How do we even begin with that? Well, now that you kind of have an idea of the 3 tiers, what we always do is we go on the Disney website and we look at prices for all of the different resorts that we would be interested in. Now, prices do fluctuate throughout the year depending on whether it's peak season or value season, things like that. So we always kind of decide what time of year that we're going, and then that's the time of year that we will look at for different pricing for those different resorts that we would be interested in. Now, we always really like to basically make a Excel spreadsheet that has a list of all of the different resorts that we're wanting to stay at, as well as the prices for each one of those resorts. And we'll usually include different lengths of stay too, since we may or may not know exactly how many days that we are wanting to go. Certain days of the week may actually be cheaper than others. I know the weekends can tend to be a little bit more expensive, so if you stay maybe just during the week, you might be able to squeeze an extra day than if you were maybe going a few days in the week and then over the weekend. Sometimes those pricings can kind of add up or vary. It's always good to kind of make just a chart to kind of see how those prices kind of differ. You can always do what's called a split stay. Now, what this means is that you are staying at one resort for part of your trip and then switching to another resort halfway through, or maybe for a day or two. Now, a really good reason to use something like this is maybe your budget does not allow you to stay at one of the more expensive resorts, but you maybe are celebrating something really special, whether it be a birthday or an anniversary or a honeymoon. What you can do is you can stay at a value or a moderate resort for most of your trip, and then maybe save your, what I call resort days, where you don't go into the parks, that you actually are going to be staying at your resort to use the pools and the restaurants and spas and things like that. But have those days be the days that you are staying at your deluxe or moderate, depending on what you're wanting to do, stay at those resorts. Some other things that are going to help you decide where you are going to be staying on your trip is looking at things like the amenities and what of those that you would actually be using. If you're somebody or you're a family that you are just planning on doing everything at the parks, you're not going to be at the resorts for very long, you're basically just there to sleep, then maybe it might be a better idea to stay at a value resort. That way you're not wasting a bunch of money on a really expensive hotel that you're not really going to be taking advantage of while you're on your vacation. Maybe you are somebody that you are going to be spending more time at the hotels. In that case, it might be a good idea to splurge just a little bit, if not for maybe just your split stay, even for your entire trip. Making sure that you plan a few resort days where you're just gonna hang out at the pool or go to the spa or just kind of explore around your resort. Are you guys celebrating something special? Is it somebody's birthday? Is it your honeymoon? That might be a good time to splurge just a little bit and stay at a nicer hotel. Going on a Disney vacation is a very special thing, and sometimes just having that little bit of extra magic can be what makes your trip just totally over the top. Another good thing to think about is where your resort is going to be located. Now, if there's a particular theme park that you know your family is going to be at for most of your trip, it might be a good idea to try and get a hotel that's a little bit closer to that theme park. So for example, in Epcot, there are a few resorts that are basically within walking distance. So that would be like Beach and Yacht Club and the Boardwalk. They are literally like, you can walk like 10 minutes and then you will be there. If you're somebody who is going to be at Epcot a lot, you might try to look and see about staying in one of those resorts. That way you can save some time on transportation and you can basically just hop over there whenever you guys want. Maybe think about the restaurants that are in the resort hotels. Now, there are some of these resorts that have some very nice dining. Some of my favorite places that we have eaten at were actually at our resort hotel. So if there are some particular restaurants that you guys are wanting to eat at, think about staying at that resort or even resorts that are close to it so that they are a little easier to travel to. Transportation is definitely a big one. There are so many modes of transportation in Disney World, whether it's going to be on a boat or the buses, or you have, like we said earlier, you can walk, there's the monorail, there's so many different things that you can use. So if transportation is something that is a concern for you, it might be wise to think about, okay, so if I'm staying at this hotel, what is that transportation going to look like? Are we going to be having to wait a really long time to get places? Are we going to have to use multiple modes of transportation to get places? Sometimes that can be a hassle. Sometimes people don't mind that, and whatever is fine. You just have to figure out what works best for you and your family. I'll give you an example with our trip. So in 2017 when we went, we stayed at Animal Kingdom Lodge. We had a safari view room. Now this was technically our first time. I went when I was little, but I don't really count that. But really this was our first time for both of us as an adult to experience Disney World. This was also kind of a belated honeymoon for us. We had been saving up for a really long time. So we really did want this trip to be really special. So we did splurge a little bit. Okay, we splurged a lot to stay in a safari room at Animal Kingdom Lodge. Now we loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Do we regret it? No. However, things I did not realize going into that trip was how far away Animal Kingdom Lodge was from everything. It is so far away. Luckily, we went during a time where it wasn't crazy busy at Disney World, so we didn't have to really wait a long time for buses, but because we were so far away, we did have multiple stops, and we were usually the last stop for a lot of things. So we would be on the bus for quite a while to get to any of the parks except for Animal Kingdom. So that was kind of a downside, but the upside was we got a really beautiful room, we got a really cool view, and some of my favorite restaurants were at Animal Kingdom Lodge. And we really enjoyed just kind of the ambiance and experience for kind of a belated honeymoon. It really kind of fit what we were going for. Now for this upcoming trip that we have in May, we are not going for quite as long. We're doing kind of a quick trip. Really the reason we're going is so that we could see Illuminations before it ends. So because of that, we're not really going to be at our resort as often as we were last time. So we are staying at a value resort. We're staying at Pop Century so that we can save some money, but also that way we don't feel like we have to take time out of our day to hang out at our resort, just because there's not as many things that we personally as a couple are interested in. It's just a great place to sleep. Now for our trip coming up in 2020, that one is a totally different trip in and of itself. We are going for 2 weeks, and we are actually going with some friends of ours. So with this, that means we're going to be traveling and touring around Disney World a little bit differently than we would if we were on our own. Now we are planning on staying at this point, we are planning on staying at the Beach Club Resort, and we are planning on sharing a 2-bedroom villa, I believe. That's what we decided on. Now normally, we could not afford to stay in a resort like that by ourselves because that's just too much for us at this point in our lives. But because we are planning on sharing that room, the cost is actually split. So it's made it pretty doable for us. So we are planning on staying there for the first week of our trip, and then our friends are going to be leaving for the second half of our trip. So we are planning on staying at Coronado for the second half of our trip. That way we can save a little bit of money but still stay at something a little nicer, since we will still be there for an entire week. We will plan on still having some resort days during that week, so we wanted something that was still a little nicer but a little bit more affordable. Alrighty guys, that is how we pick our Disney resorts. I want to know what you guys think. How do you guys choose what resorts you're going to stay at? What resorts are you guys planning on staying at here in the future? I really want to know. So please comment down below, as that does actually help our channel out. Please give me a really big thumbs up if you like me, and if you really like me, please do subscribe, as I am still growing and it really does help this channel out. So we will see you guys next time. Bye.